We are going to do a quick panel discussion then before we all break for lunch. This is all about selecting the right technology for the right challenge. I will introduce you in a minute to your moderator, Tony, who will bring on the rest of the panel. Just to say it quickly, I think we have, was that it? I was all ready to, like, improv some poetry or something, but apparently it's done that quickly, so nice and easy. Right, please welcome to the stage Tony Butler, Strategic Account Manager for Software Mind. Thank you, Tony, and I'll let you introduce your panel. Thank you.
Well, as mentioned, my name is Tony Butler. I look after strategic accounts for Software Mind. And as you'll see from your agenda, we're going to have a discussion around selecting the right technology for the right challenge. And perhaps just to get us started, it'd be good just for our panel to introduce themselves. So perhaps we can start with you, Adelina.
Hello, I'm Adelina Chalmers. I'm the geek whisperer. Please don't shoot. Some people find it really offensive, some people like it. And I've been advising chief technology officers in companies as small as 10 and as big as 100,000 people.
Hi, I'm John Lee. I'm engineering director at Moneybox. We're an app that helps people save and invest. We've been around since 2015 and have over 1.4 million customers, 8 billion of assets under administration, and have been profitable for the last year.
Hi, I'm Dan. I did a brief introduction yesterday for those of you that weren't around. I lead technology and product at Not on the High Street. We're a UK-based marketplace, home to around about 5,000 small UK businesses. Our purpose is to kind of support, empower, champion small business. Previous to that, I've had roles in e-commerce, scaling. My previous role, which I think will come up a little bit in some of the topics today, I was engineering director at Gymshark for 5 years, and then previous to that, various different software engineering and leadership roles in agency, public sector, digital transformation, because apparently I hated myself back then, and various other bits and bobs.
Hi, I'm Silky. I'm a fractional CPTO, and I work with a portfolio of enterprise and scale-ups. And previously, I had leadership roles globally for Go Student, Anaplan, CDK, which is Keyloop now, and some PE and VC-backed startups. So, yeah, thank you for having us here.
Great to have you all here. So, I was thinking, when I was asked to moderate this, it made me think back to the time when I was a group CTO, had interim CTO roles, and the challenge of hundreds of companies bombarding me trying to sell their technology. And, to be honest with you, I don't know if it's all the same for you, but I hated being sold to. It was just awful. People assuming that I wanted their product or their services. Everyone on LinkedIn wanting to be my friend. And out of courtesy, you go, yeah, okay, I'll be your friend. And then suddenly you get that message offering me a lunch voucher for 15 minutes of my time. I'm sure you've all had those as well. People working out your email address and then offering you the most amazing, life-changing product. And they don't even know me. And this is what happens. So where do we go with those? Where do we go with that? So maybe we can just answer or open it up to our panel to answer that. And perhaps, maybe, John, we can come to you first. How do you and your teams keep up to date with the latest technologies and the tools surrounding those without becoming a victim of just a latest fad?
So we've chosen an ecosystem, which for us is .NET and Azure Platform as a Service, and then we've invested heavily inside of that. And that's been since our inception, since 2015. And we don't allow deviation from that unless it's absolutely, that's the only thing that will work. So it has to be Platform as a Service, it has to be .NET. However, within .NET, it's evolving so quickly that there's just new stuff coming out all the time. It's hard enough to stay on top of what's happening in .NET, let alone what's coming out of Azure. It's insane. So we allow people to sort of stay fresh that way rather than trying to build something with a experimental database technology, for instance.
Okay, interesting. Anyone else got a view on that?
I think I agree with that the fad shouldn't be like the forcing function for having a learning culture in an organization, and investing in kind of a tech radar approach of where the core possibilities are, the BAU is, and what are the edges. And the edges could be innovation, could be commodities, and having kind of a holistic view of, where we need to lead the organization, where do we see the next stage of growth, and hence, build that capability, as a constant, and not kind of, going after the next trend, and and which is evident by having kind of constant lunch and learning sessions with the CTO, with the directors, and pulling kind of a ship through the ambiguity of the next and the next, but having a higher vantage point rather than just being reactive.
I think I talked about it a little bit yesterday as well. I think that's partially our roles. So I don't find the question so much of like, how do you stay on top of new technologies? Because I think invariably engineers come with that all of the time. It's kind of the reverse role is trying to point engineers in the right direction so that they don't do damage, they do good. And trying to control kind of the directions that things taken without limiting it too much. But the way that I've tried to approach that previously is trying to give an element of commercial awareness, an element of strategy, an element of direction. And Crystal talked about having very clear strategy, vision, and setting that early. I think that's very important. And you have to think about the architectural choices and try and, as best as you can, without a crystal ball, trying to predict kind of the directions that things are going to take in. Trying to empower engineers, particularly with a mindset of like, you're the expert here, you know more about this than me. By all means, look at new technologies, play around with them, but then take a step back. Go really deep on stuff, take a step back, think, does this fit in with where we're going? Is this, so very much part of my world currently is language choice. So is this a language choice that we need to change completely our hiring thinking around? Do we need to go out and hire completely different skill set? Or is there actually something that we could maybe sacrifice 10 milliseconds of response time for a more kind of community-led language, or something that we can invest more heavily in or can hire better for and things like that. So I think it's very nuanced. It's very tricky.
Can I add something to that? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's really
sure.
interesting. Because I'm not an engineer by background, but one of the mistakes that I've seen a lot of CTOs make is that if they fall in love with a particular technology, then they think, this is it, this is the best thing ever, ooh, let's use this. And actually from the board or the C-suite perspective, they're interested in, is this cost effective for us? Is this actually going to bring us more customers? Is this going to minimize our costs for delivery of software? It's really important to look at it holistically. And I think, yeah, you mentioning the commercial aspects of it, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, thanks. That's really interesting comments on that. I think just to pick up on something that you said, John, is that I guess if you're ultimately the gatekeeper for all of this new technology and different things that are coming on, if you almost ring fence what you do and you say, well, we're allowed to do anything within these perimeters, how do you keep your engineers, your developers still excited about new technologies if you're almost a gatekeeper?
So, I mean, we try to get our engineers excited about business problems rather than flipping it around, right? So using technology, solving business problems with technology rather than trying to find a technological solution, trying to find a business problem to a technology. And so that's permeated through everything that we do. We run small development squads like a lot of you do here, obviously. But we ensure that developers are releasing each orbit. So our development cycles are called orbits because we've got a space theme for reasons. But so and it follows shape up. So every 8 weeks we've got a new orbit starting, and we make sure that engineers are always focusing on releasing something at the end of 6 weeks. So 6 weeks of like focus and then 2 weeks of cool down, and that gets people into like the business mindset, right? They are solving business problems. That's the reason why they are there. The technology is sort of comes along for the ride, and like there are just like in any sort of advanced ecosystem with like .NET, but there's Ruby, et cetera, the choices are kind of like you've got a lot of choices already. You don't really need to reach outside of that ecosystem.
Wow. So that's really key, isn't it? About, I guess, getting these people bought into the reason of why you're doing it from a business perspective. That's really key. I see lots of questions coming in. We'll so let's pick one. How do you stop front end developers from wanting to rewrite everything every year? Wow.
P45 stencils. Sorry, I didn't really be about to answer something.
No, go ahead.
I think for me, and it's a bit of repetition, but I think that kind of commerciality, taking a step back, looking at actually, is this really a problem? And being very clear from a strategy point of view of what is important to us, where should we be making revenue investments. So go back to some stuff I was saying yesterday about making it very clear that actually that engineer's bum in a seat represents an investment of our revenue, and we're investing in your time, skill sets, capability. That's all really good, but be very careful about how we spend that time. And then just drawing a very clear picture to say, right, if you want to rewrite stuff, what is actually going to bring to us strategically, or does it contribute? There's a quadrant that I refer to quite a lot that is kind of on the two axes: strategic importance and operational performance. And obviously top right of that quadrant, absolutely, that's everything we should be doing. The kind of top left and bottom right of the quadrant is an option for us to go, is it deprioritised? Do we partner? Do we buy? Going back into the build versus buy debate that Andrew was talking about. And obviously bottom left, just don't do it. And I feel like a lot of the rewriting, a lot of the kind of gilding the lily that happens in engineering is kind of bottom left. We're being very clear to say if it falls into there, not happening.
Yeah, just to add on that, it's like it depends on the maturity stage. Like that's what probably you're also saying, that of an organization, the first 3 years or the first year of doing from POC to PO, proof of value, to kind of product optimizing for the product market fit, and so that'll set the course of your decision making framework, and these are the levels you can probably look at. So.
Yeah.
To me, when I get this kind of question, it's a sign of a type of a group of engineers that are not connected to the context of the customer they're working for. So that the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of engineers in companies that I worked with, are told how the code they're working on is contributing to the company's sales. But when they don't have that kind of context, they want to rewrite stuff because they want to perfect it, they want to make it better because they're proud of that code. But when they see that actually it's irrelevant, most customers haven't even bought this product, they'll realize that actually you need to focus on how can we make the customer buy this product rather than how can we make it better technically.
Thank you. It's interesting because what we're hearing here is part of the ever-changing role of a CTO, of being able to take technology but understand what the business is trying to do, understand what the strategy is for all of that, and explaining that on both sides. We're going to come back to that a little later because I think it's a really key thing that we sort of really want to share with the audience. Just thinking about the role of the CTO, and how, as things grow, how involved should the CTO be in a hands-on perspective? Obviously, we've got startups all the way through to sort of corporates. How involved should you be at that technical level?
I don't want to take over. I'll answer later.
I can answer from a startup point of view. So, I mean, so in the beginning, it's all hands to the pump. You've got to be super, super involved. You've then got to build your organization, right? So you've got to get your trusted lieutenants in place and then delegate to them and let them have creativity. And obviously, you build that trust over years and make sure that they are heading in the same direction that that's your vision, and then people fall in line with that. So yeah, you've got to delegate it into your team below, and then ideally into their teams below.
And that's hard, right? That can be hard. When you've been holding the baby.
Yeah.
And you're going to go, I'm going to give it to someone else now.
Yeah, so sometimes you've got to relinquish. There are many ways to do things, and sometimes it's not your way, and you've just got to let it go, as long as it's going to achieve the same outcome.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, I can't speak from a startup perspective, but from kind of scale up to enterprise kind of world, I absolutely empathise with the hardness of it being taken away from. I've been in that situation, and coming from the stereotypical kind of software engineer to kind of lead engineer to now all of a sudden my problem is people, not code, and trying to figure all that stuff out. I was fortunate to have a very strong team around me that kind of pushed me out of it and kind of just said, no, you're kind of making it much harder for everyone else around you. But I think it's very situational. The situation that I'm in now, although by definition of the company, we're in that kind of scale up kind of space, I find that there's an extra level of guidance that I'm giving, not from a code point of view. I haven't been allowed to write code for about 5 years, but definitely from an architectural choice and just thinking about it. And I think it's very situational, especially when you're the new CTO coming into a role. Mm-hmm. You have to absolutely get immersed in everything about the company, the culture, the team that you lead, the strategy or lack of strategy that the business might have, influencing upwards as well, and trying to make sure that whatever direction you take things in, or however you feel you need to apply your kind of advice or skills, it's connected and people can see that red thread as to why you're doing it.
Yeah, and just to add that you're acting as a catalyst, but sometimes you're a driver, like you said, and sometimes you just want to have good contention of different opinions, and not, because the idea is to empower, to scale, yourself, and have that, kind of diverse opinions to make good decisions. And, coding is, one of the things you're probably doing, and the other things about, how to arrive at an architectural choice. And so it's about the communication. It's a whole lot of vantage points. So, I think we are doing a good job if we are, catalyzing that sort of a culture. So yeah, conquer.
From my perspective, if I can speak from the perspective of someone who's seen hundreds of CTOs at all levels, as someone was saying earlier, grown CTO where you're the only engineer and then you have 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 engineers under you. The key mistake that I see CTOs make is that if you have 15 engineers under you and you're still doing production, all the way up to deployment even code, you're doing it wrong. I hate to use that word, but that's kind of in a nutshell. One thing I do want to mention really briefly, if I may, there is actually a fractioning of the CTO role when you get to 15 engineers. You have to decide if you want to be a visionary CTO or an operational business strategic CTO. Because if you want to be a visionary CTO, you're too attached to the code, then you need to proactively communicate that to the CEO and start to negotiate an operational business strategic CTO to join the business, who can be a VP of engineering or SVP, whatever title you want to give them, to take over 15, 20, 100 engineers producing stuff. Otherwise, often I'm called by the CEO and told, oh, we need to get rid of this guy because he's not making the best out of the engineers. And that's not the situation you want to be in. Just a little warning.
Thank you. There's a question that's come up, which I think is a good question to ask, because, as CTOs, perhaps if we join a new organization, we want to make our mark. So any experience of when you think the company has previously betted on the wrong horse and how to move off from it? How do you balance that of trying to stamp your mark, perhaps, as a CTO in a new organization, versus going, actually, what they've done is okay, I just need to build on it? How would you manage that? If you think, well, they've made the wrong choice, the wrong tech stack, or the wrong partner of choice.
You've got to be gentle, right? So you've got to pry people away. The talk before mentioned the sunk cost fallacy. You've got to be very mindful of that, and it's sort of gentle, and showing people a different way that you can take them, and then and then just doing it gradually. You maybe get the new way going in the background, run it in parallel. It starts off small, and then you say, hey, look how good it is over here, and slowly drag them across. And
that's really key, isn't it? I mean, I think earlier when they did a survey about, there's a lot of new CTOs here, I think, is, perhaps we've come from a world where we've actually just been free to go, no, you're wrong. Because that's the sort of development world or engineering world that we've grown up in. Learning those new ways of speaking to people, it's quite different, isn't it? And something that we probably need to step back and have a think about.
I mean, to me, it's about in what way has the company previously bet on the wrong horse? Does it mean they went for the wrong market? Or what does that mean? Because I personally struggle with more abstract questions. But let's say if the company made a decision to go into a particular market and turns out that's really not the place to go, and they're trying to steer away from that market, then as the leadership, CTO, CEO, etc., it's, I think, in my opinion, in my experience, best to own it and say, oh, we went down the wrong path. This is what we learned from it. We're actually, new evidence has shown us that we need to go this other path. The reason for that is because it shows again to the people in the company and the engineers that being honest about what doesn't work really is done from the top down rather than being scared and hiding it. Because again, I've worked with so many CTOs who were in hot water because their engineers were scared to tell them, this is not going to happen, this is not going to work. We know it's not going to work, but we're scared to contradict you because I'm scared you're going to put me down and tell me I'm wrong in front of all the other engineers.
Interesting. Radical candor and vulnerability, owning that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think it's very applicable to my journey so far at NOTS really is that you can very easily go in with some opinions, and I'm guilty of that as well, about from my experience and what I've done in previous roles and then seeing what we've got. And I think for me, there's two elements to it. Definitely taking the empathetic route and actually looking at influencing styles, looking at yourself as well to say, how can I help these people come to or come close to the same conclusion that I have? So how can actually, I don't have to go in and go, that's wrong, or I think this should be better. Help them to come to the same conclusion. And what I tend to find is just that whole kind of taking a step back. And engineers are great, a very particular approach and kind of filtering styles and how they go to work. But they go very deep on problems. That's great. They need to do that in order to be a good engineer. But unchecked, that's where they stay. So come and take a step back, admire the view a bit, go and talk to other companies, network, go and spend some time around other things and just understand actually that there's other ways to do things. Some engineers are great at that, some not so much. But I think it's just finding that balance and very much leading with empathy, going back to the previous talk, but also coming at it from trying to understand the person a lot more, trying to understand what makes them tick and adapting to try and help them to understand why you're coming to that conclusion as well. And it goes both ways. Like, just because I disagree or have an opinion doesn't mean I'm right. Just help me to understand like your opinion and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very nuanced.
Yeah, interesting.
Could I add something to that? Sorry.
Yeah.
So one of the, you said earlier that as a CTO or engineering leader, you have to try and kind of lead them to the conclusion that you reached as well. Is that? Yeah. So a lot of the CTOs, and that's basically negotiation, isn't it, and influencing. And a lot of the CTOs that I've worked with who perhaps might not be neurotypical, they might be more neurodiverse. They said to me, when I said that to them, they said to me, oh yeah, but I feel like then I'm lying to them. I'm manipulating them. I'm leading them to believe what I want them to believe. And that's interpreted in a very black and white way, isn't it? Because what you're trying to say is that I actually want to share. So I said to them, well, share with them. You can share with them what you're thinking, but ask them lots of questions first, rather than say, I think this, because they might be scared to contradict you and say, well, actually, this is what I don't understand, and so sometimes some of these influencing and negotiation skills, when they're described in a way that, obviously a lot of neurotypical people kind of see them and understand them, to some people they might come across, and I was very black and white myself, by the way, they might come across as, oh, you're asking me to lie to someone or manipulate them. And what I'm trying to say is that actually, no, I'm asking you to communicate with them, become very curious about how did they reach that conclusion, and then tell to them, this is how I thought about it. What do you see, what do you see challenging about that? And yeah, I just thought I'll clarify that point, because I wouldn't want anyone in the audience to think, oh, he might suggest I manipulate people, because that's not what we're suggesting at all.
Adding to that, you've got to work out the right level where you're going to make the decision, and then stay at that level, because you don't want to take away creativity from your engineers below you, because that will just cause people to leave, right? So you want to work out where the guide rails that you're setting, set those, and then walk away. And that's,
And just to open up the space, and one of the other tips I use is in a new organization, I share about me, and and something which I learned from our friends here in the CTO craft, and I've just redeployed that in my engagements, and that really helps to kind of reach out with hearts and minds, with the organization, so that they know that. You're not the boss, and we are building something together. So, and that really opens up the space for let's have good contention and good conversations to kind of steer in the right direction rather than my way, and the negotiate takes off the pressure of am I negotiating, am I helping? So.
It's been quite a fascinating discussion so far, and I think hopefully the audience will agree is that when we talk about choosing the right technology, we can think that's quite a narrow question, but actually when we open it up at a CTO role, there is so much more to that question, isn't there? It's actually the actual question about what technology to choose is actually quite narrow, but how we do it, the conversations that we have to have, the understanding of the business and the strategy and where it's going, and being able to articulate that back to our technical teams is it quite a big thing, isn't it? Sorry, Adelina?
So I think that also sometimes some CTOs are too democratic. They say to the engineers, "Oh, which tech shall we use for this?" Which is brilliant. They want to be inclusive. But then they don't do the second part of leadership, which is then to make a decision that will upset some people. And that's okay, because that's what leadership is about. Not everybody will like you, just like not everyone in this room will like me either, so it's fine.
We like you. I just want to change it up a little bit, because I think until you probably get into a CTO type role or a head of engineering, we probably don't have to deal with this. What are the keys to success when it comes to moving from, say, a standard client-vendor relationship to a true strategic partnership? How do you manage that? How do we make that a success? Anyone?
I think for me, in my experience anyway, the kind of transparency and kind of some of the values that you'd apply to general leadership with people. At the end of the day, if you want a partnership, you're still working with people and relationships with people. So shifting it away, there's quite a recent example actually where we were very transactional with our chosen cloud provider previously, and just starting to really build relationships and ask questions and lean on them more. I think Charity earlier mentioned about kind of sweating your kind of vendors harder. I think there's an element of that yes, you can be very kind of, we want X, Y, Z. But I think just trying to understand, trying to get at what their roadmap is, trying to understand actually how we can work together. Again, previous role did that quite a lot with a large e-commerce provider. And actually we got to a point actually where we were very close to their roadmap, one of only 3 companies where we were exposed to what's coming up, and I had some influence with them. So I think actually shifting the mentality away from you provide me some things, I want X, more to just trying to understand a bit more, trying to encourage them to blend their roadmaps with our kind of wants, and then just trying to figure out where does all that fall. I think it's it's really important.
To be able to do that, you need to be spending obviously a fair chunk of money with them. So
well,
normally enterprise plans, because otherwise you're not going to get very close to them. And so I mean that for us that means choosing a few vendors and then building deep relationships with them.
Yeah, I think
you don't want to spread too widely.
I agree for the most part. Large chunks of money help, but I think also in that selection, bringing it back to the original kind of purpose, in the selection of the kind of the technology, I think it's really key to understand actually what is their kind of purpose and where do they kind of aim, because actually you can have a really trusting partnership with a vendor or a SI or a kind of digital transformation kind of consultancy, regardless of how much money you spend with them. It's somewhat rare, but if their purpose actually is to kind of champion support, if they align with what you're trying to do, then there's an extra thread that you can tug on there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately money does speak most of the time.
Interesting. Helena?
Just 2 quick points from me. One of them would be that building such a rapport with them that they are not scared to say early about problems. I mean, I think that to me is a best sign of partnership rather than top down or kind of I'm the important person between the two of us. And another one that I actually spoke to a vendor about, which was interesting, because vendors sometimes hire me to talk to their CTOs as well, was that they have actually expertise in your industry. Yes, they're a vendor, but they understand the regulations. If you're a fintech or in medtech or any of these highly regulated industries, then they understand the kind of regulations that you have to comply with. Therefore, sometimes they can even warn you of things you haven't even thought about.
And that's really key, isn't it? And quite a mindset change. I guess if we've just been used to, RFI, RFPs, quotes, etc., to actually bring them in and actually help, work alongside them with our strategy, etc. I just want to open a question. I mean, a number of these questions have come up sort of aligned to this. And I know it's something that, Adelina, you've definitely got some views on. I mean that in the nicest possible way. I think most of us, from a CTO or engineering point of view, we've come from a technical background. So suddenly moving into this world of having to think about strategy and KPIs and shareholder value may not come naturally to us, especially if we're new to that role, as we discussed. Perhaps we've suddenly become a boss, as was mentioned in our previous presentation, and all the challenges that can bring. How do you communicate with your CEO, your board members about new technologies to help them understand the value? When our CEO comes and goes, hey, when are we buying AI? And those sorts of questions, how do you manage that of having years of experience, perhaps being able to talk technically, to suddenly having to take all that technology and put it into speak that people that aren't technologists would understand and see the value in it?
Would someone else like to start first?
I'll just say that, lean on your, superpowers and, your skills of, when you were probably, a senior engineer, creating explainable designs and, so it's just that, and breaking complexity into small chunks. And that's the muscle which you've built over the years, which really helps in having those conversations to kind of, create kind of a baseline and, have so explainability and, breaking complexity into smaller chunks, and also ask how it's landing and look for that, chemistry. And building relationships with your board is, it pays, a long way, because you do want to have like a equity of point of view, and, by having that, investing in that relationship from the get-go would really help. So, yeah.
I agree with the superpowers. One of the things that I've done previously, I think it's been TPS, Toyota Production System, Lean Six Sigma. It's come up a few times, but I've done a little bit of Lean Six Sigma stuff previously, and actually one of the most powerful parts of that for me is just really having a set of tools to go try and unwind solutions. So generally speaking, from a board, investor, CEO point of view, most of the stuff tends to come from to your point, when are we buying an AI? Or when are we doing this, that, and the other? It's solution-led. So then just really trying to understand and unwind that and go, well, actually, what problem do we solve with that? And taking someone on a journey back to effectively use cases, that's actually not invest in areas that are just solutions. And let's look at the problems that we've got. If AI or ML or something like that ends up to be the kind of perfect solution to that, then great. But invariably, as we all know with Gen AI, it's expensive and risky, and we don't quite know where it's going. But yeah, I think just unwinding that and just getting back to being really annoying, being kind of like you're in a toddler and just asking why all of the time. But obviously explain why you're asking why, because you don't want to piss off the CEO. But yeah, I think just asking why a lot is a strength.
Yeah, it's a good question.
You've got to understand the level that your CEO likes to operate at, and so for us that's like big building blocks. We don't really go any deeper, and we don't, because we stay in this one ecosystem, we don't normally put big tech decisions and big budgets in front of the board and say, sign here, this is what you've got to accept. We try and get them to, so we did a big migration where all our investing activities were done by a third party, and we built our own investing system and we had to cut over from one party to another with zero downtime, we got them interested in that migration because that's where the risk was. So that's where we spent our time. That's where we got external counsel. The tech was just boring .NET, SQL Server, Azure Platform as a Service. So that didn't even get mentioned. And everybody needs something to worry about. We got them worrying about the migration, not the technology.
Interesting.
Brilliant, yeah. So one of the key things that the board cares about, as John says, is risk. But there are other ways. So for example, if you want to implement some new technology, what the board care about is, and you can pick any of these angles, but one of them is, how does it help the company with customer acquisition? How does it help the company with customer retention? How does it help the company with customer upsell? Or how does it help the company with diminishing the current cost of engineering feature delivery? It's about the business, not about the technology. I hate to say it at a tech conference. And so risk is definitely one of them. And if you think about it, we have the emotional brain, the limbic system, and the logical brain, the neocortex. A board is there, they are allegedly, kind of the ones that help guide the company towards success. If you tell them, if we don't do this thing, if we don't implement this new technology, the company will lose market share. And you make that point by essentially talking to the other departments, to customer success, and find angles with them. Often the CTOs that I've worked with really struggle with building a business case because they haven't spoken about the implications of this technology with other departments, like the customer success department, like sales, etc.
Thank you. So that's quite an art, isn't it, to learn? Because historically we may not have come from a place where we speak to other departments and we just head down, do what we have to do. So having to learn all those skills and to your point is asking why is this important? What difference does it make? What part of the business or the strategy is this supporting? So really good questions in interacting with the board.
I have actually made a video that's on my LinkedIn profile where it shows a black and white how the board said no to this. It was a product redesign, actually, hardware and software, which is even harder than just software. And then how the board agreed when he changed the pitch to business outcomes. And it shows quite clearly where the difference was, and hopefully gives you some ideas of the sort of things that boards want to hear. It's a very specific example on my LinkedIn profile if you want to have a look.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so I think it's been an interesting discussion. Hopefully everyone's got something out of it. But I think if nothing, we've learned that actually choosing the right technology as a CTO is a very wide and varied role. And it's an ever-learning role, isn't it? We're never going to know everything. So we'd just like to say thank you to our panel. And if anyone's got any questions afterwards, then feel free to come and chat to us. And hopefully all of you've been able to take something away from our discussion that will help you in your future roles as CTOs. So
thank you to Tony for chairing.
Thank you.
Cheers, Tony.
Thank you.